Don't even say. Who's recording?
Okay, so here's what we're about to do. I'm going to take two benchmark questions. The first one, I'm going to model my thinking for you. Okay, these are from your quarter 3 benchmark. Just because there was some confusion in what y'all were doing for your work. Okay, so we were kind of split as to how we solved this problem. So I'm going to work through it and go through the thinking that should take place when you are doing these problems. Okay, so I'm going to ask myself questions, I'm going to model it, I'm going to work it out. Then I'm going to give you one question, okay? It's going to look familiar because you've seen it. But I want y'all to work through your own thinking process that I'm going to model it, and then I want you to do it on that one question, okay? And answer all of the questions. Now, y'all did really good, but there's still some things that we want to work out. Here's what I'm seeing. Y'all are using your ELA strategies. Okay? Y'all are doing a good job of highlighting, you're doing a good job of annotating, you're doing a good job of that. Here's the problem. Everything you highlight, you don't use. So let's say you highlight a number in your problem, you're not putting that in your work. So my question then would be, why are you highlighting? Okay? You have to understand that if you're highlighting something, we're not just highlighting to highlight. If you're highlighting something, you're stating, I need this information in my problem. Okay, so we're just going to kind of go through that together. Bless you. We're going to go through this one. I'm going to model out my thinking, breaking it down, and then I'm going to let you do that for one problem. Okay? Y'all good? Can I get it over?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay, so let's look at this question. A stick is placed inside a cylinder container so that it touches both bases along its diagonal. So we see the picture of a cylinder here, and then the length of the stick rounded to the nearest thousandth of an inch is blank inches. Okay? So as I'm reading this problem, I'm starting to question myself. First question I'm asking, what is this problem asking me to do? Okay? So I'm going to go through and highlight things that I find that are important. So, for example, okay, just reading it initially, I said, okay, cylinder. That's something that's important. Okay, we've talked about cylinders in different ways, and I know that there's something that I'm going to have to do with cylinder. Okay? And then it touches both bases along its diagonal. So two more keywords that I see are bases and diagonal. Okay? Make sense? So I read it. Before I even looked at the picture, I'm like, all right, they've got cylinder, they've got bases, they've got diagonal. So if I look over here, I've got my two base numbers. All right? But I still have to read the question that it tells me. So the length of the stick rounded to the nearest thousand. Okay? So length of the stick nearest thousand. So I didn't highlight every word in my sentence. Okay? I'm only highlighting what I know will help me to get this answer. Alright? So let's start annotating. So now, okay, I know a cylinder. Well, I'm going to write myself little notes about what I know I've done with cylinder. Okay? First thing pops in my head, volume. Okay? Oops. My board's messed up. Y'all see. Y'all know. I can spell. Alright. So, volume. But as I keep reading, now it's talking about bases. So, if I think about what volume truly means, it means the space within something. This question here is not asking me to find the volume. Okay? We can't always look at a picture of something and assume, oh, it's a cylinder. We just did volumes of cylinders, so that's got to be what I'm doing. Okay? No. This question is asking us, what is this length? What the length is from here to here. Okay? So now I need to think a little bit more. Talking about bases, talking about diagonal. Automatically, bases, diagonal signals me to a theorem that we learned, which is Pythagorean theorem. So what I'm going to do is draw my little arrow and write my formula. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Okay? So now, let's think about this. If I'm saying that I'm using my a squared plus b squared equals c squared, let me reread my question to make sure it's really not asking me about value, that it really is asking me about length. So it says the length of the stick rounded to the nearest thousandth of an inch is blank inches. So I should be using Pythagorean theorem. Are y'all with me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So if I could, I'll draw my little line here, and I'm just going to have to, y'all see my pen's a little off, okay? So I'm just making my triangle the best I can. So I have my two bases. I have my 4, and I have my 8. Does everybody see that? So not only have I picked, all right, I'm doing a squared plus b squared equals c squared, right? I also have 2 of my bases. Okay, so are y'all seeing my thought process throughout this? I'm not just highlighting words to highlight words and just annotating anything. I'm truly thinking about my own thinking. Okay, so now I'm going to plug my numbers in. Okay, but before I do that, I have to ask myself, this is Pythagorean theorem, but what measurements do I have? Am I looking for C or am I looking for A and B? So that's where I'm going to erase this just because it looks bad. I pay attention to what I'm missing. I'm missing what's over here. Okay? If I made that triangle, my right angle's here, and it's across. So automatically, thinking back to class, I know I'm missing my C. Okay? So I'm going to calculate now. We've got our A, which is 4, and our B, which is 8. So now I can enter that in to my formula. I've got 4 squared plus 8 squared equals C squared. Okay? So I've broken down this, and now I'm ready to calculate. Okay? I've done 4 squared, which is 16, plus 8 squared, which is 64, and I still have my C squared. Okay? So now I'm going to add 14 and 64, which gives me 78 equals C squared. Okay? I'm tempted to say that I'm done. Okay? At this point, I'm like, all right, I've worked it, I've plugged it in, I've added, I'm done. But we cannot have that squared on C. Okay? First, just looking at questioning myself again, I can't stop with 78 to be my length in inches when this side is 4 and this side is 8. Okay? So I would then say, all right, now I need to do my square root. So I'm going to write my number. And what I get is 8.317. 8.8317. Sorry about that. And my question tells me something else that I've highlighted as important, to round to the nearest thousandth. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and annotate right here. That's 3 places. Right now, I have 4 places. Does everybody see that? Okay? So I need to go all the way to 3 places. This is 80, sorry. The calculators. So I end up getting 8.9. Let me change this really quick. 8.9442. Okay? So in order for me to round to the nearest thousandth, I have to look at the place values behind the thousands, okay, which is the 10,000. So here's my place value. You know y'all's little song that you learned that I don't like? 4 or more raises 4, 5 or more raises 4, 4 or less, let it rest. Since this is less than 4, we do nothing, okay? So our end answer would be 8.944, okay? Do y'all have any questions for me? Okay, and I have to put my inches. Very good. All right, yes, ma'am. Okay, that's a good question. She asks, every time I deal with length, is it Pythagorean theorem? First, you have to look at what the question is even asking you. But some of us did volume for this question because all they did was look at the fact that it was a cylinder. Okay? The fact that it's a cylinder is not always going to be volume. You have to read what it's asking for. So think about it. If you solve volume, is volume telling you the length of something? No. Okay? So therefore, can we make a triangle here? If I draw my diagonal, and it's not helping that my board isn't centered. What did I make? What shape? Triangle. So think about what you've learned this year. What do we know how to find the missing side of a triangle? What do we use? So that's why, okay? You know length, triangle, we use Pythagorean theorem, okay? But I think it's because y'all had just learned volume that you saw cylinder and you did volume, okay? But we didn't properly break down that question to make sure that it's asking us to find volume. Does that make sense? Yes or no? Okay, do you see how I questioned myself as I went through this? I didn't just highlight stuff to highlight it, okay? I looked at volume, and the reason why I wrote volume was because that was a common mistake that y'all made. That's something you have to differentiate with. You can't just assume because it's a shape, I'm going to find an area, volume, or circumference, or whatever. You have to read the question thoroughly, and that's what I find with y'all is the breakdown. You know how to highlight, you know how to annotate. But in math, what you highlight, you need to use. Okay? And some of us, there's that breakdown. So we're going to practice that today. Make sense? No more questions. Okay, do you think that I have answered this completely? This question? Okay, I didn't circle my answer, but other than that, do you think that I annotated well? Would you consider this a strong model? Yes, okay. So what I'm going to want y'all to do is your thought process. This is my thoughts right here. I'm drawing out stuff, okay? I'm annotating. This means this means that. I want y'all to do this for one question. You won't need a calculator, but you have your highlighter, you have your pencil. So I want you to make sure, it's actually two questions.